Recording has started.
Perfect. All right, good morning, everybody. We will go ahead and call our meeting to order at 10:02 this morning. Roll call and introductions. Just a reminder, we do not do roll call on this call due to the sheer number of people. Daryl has placed the link in the chat. If you guys could go and sign in sometime today, that would be great. The first item on our agenda this morning is our 2023 officer elections. Daryl, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So the ESInet Users Group Charter calls for election of officers being the chair, vice chair, and secretary at the first meeting of each year. This is the first meeting of the year. So the terms are for 1 year each and until replaced. So I think the question, first of all, Tina, if you want me to just go through and ask for nominations, I can do that. And
yeah, I think that would be great.
so for the first position, for the position of chair, the first question would be directly for you, Tina. Are you willing to continue on in that position?
I think I would like to allow somebody else the spot, but you know, if we don't get any, then that's a different conversation. But I would love for somebody else to have the opportunity.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations for the position of chair?
Daryl, this is Kathy. I'm interested in the chair position.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else? Going. Okay, so we have one nominee for the position of chair. That means, assuming that we vote as a group to approve that one nomination, that means that we do need a new person for the position of vice chair. Do I have any nominations for the position of vice chair?
Daryl, it's Kathy. She doesn't know it, but I'm going to nominate Tina.
Tina, do you accept that nomination?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do we have any other nominations for the position of vice chair?
Daryl, can I add my 2 cents into this election process? The only thing I want to say is I really knew very minimal things about the system, the ESInet, the way that it worked, the way that it functioned a year ago. And because of you and Kimberly Culp and everybody that's involved on this call, I have learned so much. So, you know, in my role and knowing just more about the state. So even if you guys don't know, everybody that's been in this position is very, very helpful. And it's a great opportunity to learn, you know, how the state works and how the system we all use works. So it's not scary, I promise.
So,
thank you, Tina. Go ahead.
This is Kimberly. So Tina, I think that's a great point. And really, I mean, you serving as vice chair is fantastic, but I would like to encourage other people to consider being the vice chair so you can shadow Kathy, assist her, and learn. That's kind of the handoff intent, was that the vice chair would then take the position of chair. So you have a year to get comfortable, a year to work with the chair, to then be ready for that next year, so that continuity of the flow of the discussions could take place. So I would highly recommend somebody who, and it's not a ton of time, at least it wasn't when I was doing it. I mean, we were in the middle of the ESInet project, so I invested time, but that was different. But Tina, wouldn't you say it's not a ton of time weekly that you have to dedicate to this?
No, absolutely not. It's not a ton of time. And like I said, there's a lot of people that help. You know, I answer a few emails a month maybe, and just work with Daryl on agenda and making sure that I included the items from the previous month on the agenda. So just a couple hours. It's really not a lot.
Any other nominations for vice chair?
So Danette, don't get mad, but can I throw your name out there?
I'm sorry, I missed that, Kimberly. Who were you nominating?
I was throwing Danette out there. I just don't want her to get mad and
She said no audio. Sorry.
Oh, that's perfect. Then I did the right thing. So I would like to nominate Danette.
Danette, can you type in chat whether you accept that nomination?
Nope, she can't do that either. So
I'm assuming she's there we go. So Danette says she would like to learn more. She would love to learn more and would even tag team with Tina in the role.
Well, we can, if you want to remove my name and add Danette, and then Danette, I can just be your co-pilot. I am totally happy to help, and I'm always available if that works for you.
Thank you, Tina. Danette, does that work for you? Great. So as of right now, we have Kathy as the sole nominee for chair and Danette as the sole nominee for vice chair. Before I close that, does anybody else want to nominate someone for vice chair? Going. And then there's my position. I'm the secretary. I'm willing to continue on in that position. However, I think it would be yet another opportunity for somebody to learn if you wanted to be secretary. And it wouldn't be a whole lot of work because I'll continue maintaining the website. I'll continue doing anything else related to facilitating the organization as commission staff. So it wouldn't be a whole lot of work. You might have to occasionally run a meeting if the vice chair and the chair can't attend. But otherwise, I think it'd be a good opportunity for anyone to participate. So with that, does anybody want to nominate themselves or someone else for the position of secretary? Easiest position of the three. Okay, well, I guess it'll just be me then. So with that, Tina, we have a slate of one nominee for each of the three positions. So I don't know that we need to have a vote unless it's just a vote to accept that slate of candidates.
Do you want me just to send out a real quick email to everybody just to get that acceptance of the votes, and then we can call it good? Because I think that's what we did the last year, maybe.
I think that'd be fine. Or if you want to do it with just the people on the call, I think that would be allowed under the charter as well. And you could just say, is anybody opposed to that? Might be the easiest way to ask.
Yeah, we can do that. Does anybody have an opposition to Kathy Rayleigh as the chair and Danette Martin as the vice chair for the Colorado ESInet group?
And Daryl Branson as the secretary.
Oh, I'm sorry. And Daryl Branson as the secretary. Okay, not hearing any. We will go ahead and show those as accepted.
Thank you. And what I would suggest, Tina, is that you continue to run the meeting for today, and then Kathy can take over at the next meeting just for a smooth transition.
Yeah, that's totally fine. I don't mind. All right. So on to project updates. Tracy?
If I take myself off mute, that helps a little bit. All right. We've got a few updates. We did add a couple items to the tracker. Thank you guys for submitting the tickets and including Andrew and I in the Fort Morgan versus the Western Slope call issue that came up, as well as I think, oh, this was a different issue too. So we added that to the tracker. Andrew will be working with Vicki on that to see what happened, as well as Entrado. Another thing that Wes asked me to pass on that I put on here is Buckley currently has 3 ESInet sessions up and would like to make that 2. So our team is on that as well. We're still working with the Pitkin County, the Vail call routing, where they want us to make some changes. Vicki has been working very close with Motorola, Entrado, and the PSAP to try to get this project scheduled. We haven't been successful in getting everyone available at the same time. So I know she's going to circle back around and see if we can't get the PSAP and Motorola to share some options with us as far as when they can continue with this. Unfortunately, you have a whole bunch of people that have to be on the call at the same time. So hopefully more to come on that. Yeah.
I wanted to circle back on your first item, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow. So if you want me to wait, that's fine.
No.
So this is Kimberly, and I just want to clarify on that ticket. So Fort Morgan, when it says versus Western Slope or Denver metro area, what my intent was on that ticket was that was our first transfer, not even a transfer, sorry, the first misroute to us from Eastern Colorado. Typically, we've been getting them from the Denver area, Broomfield, or the Western Slope. So the PSAPs impacted Larimer County and Fort Morgan, yes, but that's just what I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
On the issue description.
Okay. Let me just jot that down, and I will update that when we're finished. So yeah, typically, you're just not getting them from Eastern Colorado.
This was the first call delivery that should have gone to Fort Morgan that went to one of my PSAPs. So the other ones that we've reported to you have been either Western Slope or mainly the Denver metro area.
Okay.
And you should have all that information in the ticket, including the Intrado ticket and date and time, caller information.
Yep. And Vicki and Andrew, both, she's kind enough to stick around and help us out. And they both have access to the 911 net. So I'm sure that that's underway. I think Andrew's on the call. I don't know that Vicki was able to join.
Yeah, I'm here. And then the initial indication on this is that it was not a misroute. The Intrado believes the telephone number was not in the database. Therefore, it was more of a default routed call. So they are working with the other, I guess it's a provider, to update the telephone record in the database. But if that changes or gets updated, or finalized, then we'll have it added. But that's the information I have right now.
Yeah. So Andrew, this is where we've gone round and round and round with Lumen and Intrado. Larimer County, none of my PSAPs are a default route. So with the ESInet migration, we weren't able to have default routes locally any longer, and so we're just not supposed to be factored in as a default route path. I mean, it was told that we weren't able to be. So it's very curious if that's what you guys are seeing. I would love to have the data on that and see why one of our PSAPs for that particular region would be a default route. I was told that that is the case even on the Western Slope, that a technician is actually seeing my PSAPs in there as a default route. Which again, on the Western Slope, that shouldn't be the case at all. In the Denver metro area, shouldn't be the case. In Northern Colorado, even though we would love it to be the case, it's not the case. It has to go down to Denver. So I'm very confused by that.
Okay, and I'll work with Intrado and the past incidences and call examples with Vicki and try to put this thing, get it all figured out, share the information, and have it work correctly.
That's great. We keep going round and round about this default route scenario. We've got lots of documentation on how the ESInet and default routing, we were told, is set up and how it's supposed to work. And Cindy pulled a lot of that stuff together for us. And so if you guys are seeing Larimer County PSAP, my sheriff's office PSAP, as a default path in the network, one, that's very interesting. And two, how? Because that is to the contrary of how we were told that was supposed to work. So that additional information would be really great for this group because, again, we keep repeating this conversation.
Okay, I understand. And yeah, thank you for for further clarification. So I will pursue, that with all the other information and other calls in mind too. Especially if you're being told repeatedly that it's a default route when they're not supposed to exist. I agree. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense and needs an explanation.
And I'll add, Andrew, we can pull all of Cindy's information too if Vicki doesn't have that. She just wasn't available for this call, but I know there's been history on this since, way before I joined the team as well. So Cindy does have a lot of information.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else, Kimberly?
No, and thank you. And I do apologize for interrupting your flow.
Oh, no, always do, guys. I want to hit, I want to answer your questions as they come up. It works better that way. And especially when we have the right people on the phone call to go through it. There were a couple of other items that I'm going to move to the closed list. One of them, like Wes had told a lot of you, the Colorado being able to utilize the 988 has been put into place. Huge thanks to Entrado for helping us work through that. And then we did talk internally along with Entrado on the PSAP training to 911 net. And it sounds like a lot of PSAPs utilize that differently, and they need, the different equipment and different conversations that need to be had. So the ask is to do those as a one-off. If you guys have any PSAPs or any PSAPs that are on the line, if you don't know how or don't have access to 911 net and you would like some assistance and guidance, it's fairly simple training. And we would like to do that kind of as a one-off so that we make sure that you're all getting the individual attention and training that you need for your specific situation. So both Lumen and Entrado are open to doing that, and we'll, just jump on it, let us know what you're looking for. And I'd be happy to schedule the time with each of you if that's needed.
And Tracy, I did send out a email to all of the PSAPs and the 911 authority executives saying, if you want training on this, let me know.
Perfect.
And I've got a fairly long list now, so you may regret wanting to do it one-on-one, but if that's still the way you want to do it, that's fine. And do I send that list to Wes or to you, or who would be the best recipient?
Why don't you send it to me, and that way I can work with Entrado and the PSAP and get everybody's schedule. We'll take something off of Wes's plate.
Sounds good.
All right, Tracy, any other updates on your tracker?
No, I don't have anything else.
Just a quick question. I know you said you mentioned Cheyenne Mountain on here. Is that still the last remaining PSAP to be migrated, or is there another one?
Let me double check. I believe so. Yes, I know we're still working with funding on Buckley.
Right. Technically they're migrated. They're just not paying.
And yeah, it looks like on Wes's tracker over here, we are still waiting on that last one.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Do we have any PSAPs, migrated PSAPs or authorities on that have issues that should be on the tracker that are not? Okay. Tracy, are we going to go over the statistics today, or did I see an email from you this morning?
So I will leave that up to, I guess, this team to decide. Cindy and I aren't 100% clear on the different metrics that were being pulled. I have never been a part of this. So I do have a meeting set up with my NOC to talk about this tomorrow and get more details for you guys. So we can either stumble through it now and I can share what I know, or we can do it next month when we have the experts on the phone.
I'm okay. We can just make sure that Kathy has it on the agenda to take a deep dive into next month.
Okay.
That way just the information is solid and you're more comfortable.
Yeah, and we used to do this with you guys quarterly, and we're more than happy to do it monthly. I just, I did speak with our lead engineer and he gave me some information, but I think it needs to be broken down into something that's a little bit easier to understand for everybody.
And this is in the folder for today's meeting, so if anybody wants to look at it, it's there. Most of these metrics make sense based on what is required in the tariff for quarterly reporting. The only one that doesn't make sense to me is the MOS, which typically lower scores means worse quality. And what the tariff says is that they'll keep it over 4, which it looks like that's what's happening. But then, Tracy, what you said is that they investigate anything over 5, which tells me that maybe CenturyLink is using a different scale than what was used in the tariff. So that's the only thing I'd like some explanation on, I think.
Okay.
But I think having someone who can go through each of these metrics and describe what it means and what, if it doesn't meet those metrics, what it means in terms of call quality, I think that might be very helpful for the group for a future meeting.
Yes. Yeah, and that is what they said, is it is a ranking of voice quality. And he just didn't really share more details on that, but in all fairness, I asked him 10 minutes before this meeting, so.
Okay.
This is Rich Johnson. Sorry, this is Rich Johnson. I think that's just a misunderstanding. That the industry standard is, the lower the MOS score, the worse the quality. So that comment that if it goes up over 5, I think that's just a misunderstanding. Typically, it's 4 or lower. Things are investigated. Around 3.5 or so, it really gets choppy, and below 3, it starts getting to the point where you can't understand. So the lower the MOS score, the worse. The higher, the better.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
I think you got covered, Tina. Joe, do you have a question?
Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest if there's going to be an explanation of these, it might be helpful if there are some examples of call quality recordings at different levels. Would help to understand.
Okay, Tracy, is that something that you can pull together when you work on these?
You want like examples of like live calls?
Well, I assume there may be recordings you would have example that would show what the impact would be on the person receiving the call. What they would hear. And
Okay.
It would give an idea of how bad it is at what levels we're talking about.
I can certainly ask the NOC if they can provide a couple examples of different levels. And that's who I'm meeting with tomorrow, so I will ask them.
Yeah, and there are also different kinds of call quality criteria, like jitter and delay, and this that I don't know if it'd be helpful for people to hear. What's the difference between different levels on the different types of call quality impacts.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Tracy, for pulling that stuff together.
Of course.
Maybe, Tracy, just a suggestion. I think this is a good thing. I think we're going to have a hard time pulling out bad examples of MOS, because MOS on the Lumen infrastructure is incredibly good. Yeah. But your NOC folks may be able to go on the internet and find examples. So here's a MOS of 3.0 versus 3.5 versus 4.0. But to find, if we just look at that, we're solid. About 4.2, 4.34 is the highest a true network can get. I think they say it can go up to 4.5 or 5.0. I've never seen it that high. So that is an incredible, that's very good quality right there. So you might have to go on the internet to find just some choppy examples. It would be hard to pull it out of our actual infrastructure.
Never hurts to ask, guys, right? We'll see what I can get from them, either from them or from someone else on the team, or like you said, off the internet.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Tracy. That sounds good.
And Rich, I agree. This is extremely consistent. MOS scores looks like 4.1, 4.2 just across the board.
Which is great for everyone.
All right. Tracy, do you have anything else, or does anybody else have anything for Tracy about those sections? Okay. We'll move on to old business. I know Tim's not on the line, but Daryl, do you have anything that we need to discuss about the amendment filing?
I do not. In fact, you guys probably know more about it than I do. My understanding is that Tim was going to be holding some meetings with stakeholders that I can't attend as commission staff. So I don't know if those meetings have taken place or not. I can know if the meetings took place. Does anybody know if those meetings have taken place or are continuing to take place?
Yeah, this is Tracy. The meetings are taking place. I've been a part of them. I did get a quick update from Tim. They're just continuing to work on the tariff amendment. According to the conversations, he's making some good progress. We're going to continue to meet next week and develop the new amendment. His goal is to get something finalized by the end of January.
Very good.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
I know that Wes and Tim are not on the call, so I don't think we really have anything as far as text to 911 or spatial call routing. Does anybody have any questions that we can send them or anything about that before we move on? Matt, go ahead.
I feel like spatial call routing is so far down the road. I don't know that it should be kept on the agendas for these meetings.
Okay, we can let Kathy know, and if she decides to take it off. I know at one point I was asked to leave it on there because we just wanted to keep it on the radar, but we can take it off if the rest of the group wants to.
Sure. And that's just my take on it. Maybe the rest of the group feels differently, but from discussions that's kind of seems where we're at with that.
Okay.
So Matt, at one time we were talking about possibly adding in to the tariff the inclusion of the transitional data management tools
Mhm.
that TrueLink has, which is not spatial call routing, but it's a step in that direction.
Right.
That would be a better thing to keep on here since that's more attainable, or should we just take it off entirely, in your opinion?
My take is Tim's not ready to discuss that anytime soon, but maybe we should ask Tim.
Okay. Well, and I did get the impression that until the ECATS amendment is done, he's not really going to be focusing on anything else as far as amendments to the tariff.
Okay.
Can I make one comment there? This is Rich. Sorry, with Intrado. Just want to make sure that everyone understands that the technology to do spatial routing is there, right? Colorado's on the same system that South Dakota and Nebraska are on their wide full I3 spatial routing. So it's more of, getting the paperwork done, I think, everyone agreeing on it, but I just want to let you know that the technology is there and the system that you're on, other states are doing GIS spatial route.
So Rich, I think we understand that the technology is there, but my understanding is that the data set, the GIS data set statewide was not, and that's why we were looking at the transitional data management system. Is that your take?
Agreed.
As well? You think?
Yeah, I would agree
Okay.
with that. Now, and that's kind of an operational piece of it, that we need to have those boundaries loaded in order to do spatial routing. But again, with that assumption that, and the system can turn up different PSEPs and different statuses. So if one PSEP was ready with their GIS information, technically, again, I'm saying that not legislatively or contractually, but technically, if we have one PSEP ready with their GIS data, we could turn them up to GIS routing where other PSEPs weren't. So just again, I just want to clear the air here is to talk about the technical capabilities. But yeah, I would agree that the TDMS is a huge help in getting PSEPs and GIS authorities ready to do spatial routing. But again, with that assumption, once they are ready, the system could route it today.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. I feel like the TDMS with our 58 separate 911 authorities and local governments, I feel like the TDMS will be a critical step in moving us together towards full I3. But I think the issue at the moment is just more of a process and timing issue. So thank you.
Agreed. And I'll just one more comment. in other statewide type of deployments, and we've done them here, we've done them other places in the country, that TDMS has proved to be very valuable, pulling all those different agencies together.
Thanks, Rich. Kimberly, I saw you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
No, I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Where am I? Tracy, do you think we need to leave DIA on the tracker sheet for the 10-digit dialing? I feel like that maybe we've done all we can do, and I know they've got some issues on their side that they're working through.
Yep. I would say no, but we could take it off. Mainly because, to your point, they're well aware. Wes is on top of this. They need new equipment, and as based on what I've been told, DIA is actually just a transfer PSAP. So the original PSAP getting the call is getting the 10 digits, and if necessary, transferring it to DIA. I don't see anything else that Lumen can do other than Wes from the sales side help with upgrading equipment. But we all know that there's an expense to that too, and it has to be included in a budget, and that's on DIA.
Okay, I'll share that with Kathy. She had to step away for just a minute and let her know, and she can decide. The Lumen knock. Tracy, I thought I saw an email that you were going to give an update, but maybe that was something else. Or Daryl, were you going to give the update on the Lumen knock?
Yeah, I think that's actually my item. So a couple of meetings ago, because of some other issues, we said that we were going to start tracking issues with responsiveness from the Lumen knock. And I asked people to let me know if they were experienced anything, if they had to call the knock and had to wait a long time or didn't get a call back or whatever the issue might be. I have not received any further updates since the last meeting. So I guess the question is, should we keep this on the agenda for the future in case there are issues, or maybe I can just bring it up if somebody reports something to me? Or we can keep it on here just to remind people that that's an option, that if they have an issue with the knock, they should let me know so that I can bring it up at these meetings.
Does anybody have any feedback? Are we seeing, shorter hold times? Are we seeing responses? Mandy, go ahead.
Yeah, we actually had an issue with the knock. We had called in a help ticket, and man, I need to research the dates. I intended to bring it up on this call. We had called in a help ticket on a Thursday, and the tech wasn't notified, or he didn't get it. I don't know if he wasn't notified or the way they notify him wasn't clear, or I don't know what the problem was, but it wasn't resolved until Tuesday. And that seems a little excessive. And in fact, he had mentioned that he just happened to see it and was like, whoa, what's this about? And kind of sought it out himself. I was quite irritated that he didn't realize or hadn't been made aware on that previous Thursday that there was an issue.
Yeah, he discovered that by accident on Tuesday, didn't he, Mandy?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Can you report that to Daryl so he can?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and to clarify, the primary purpose of this spreadsheet that I'm keeping on these is to send them to the NOC supervisor so that he can follow up and hopefully make improvements to their processes. So yeah, if you could write up what happened and just send it to me in an email, that'd be appreciated.
Patty, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Patty. We had Brett's did have an issue with the knock. I'm not I guess they didn't go through you, Daryl, but they were pretty responsive in handling it afterwards. If that's something that we need to get to you just for the tracking purposes, we can. But I kind of thought they went through you.
Well, there was one report from Bretsa, but it wasn't a 911 issue. It had to do with an issue they had while transferring an internet circuit. But I did pass that on to CenturyLink for them, even though it wasn't a 911 issue.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Patty. Jennifer?
Good morning. This is not necessarily related directly to the knock, but we are still receiving calls from Wyoming And I've been working with Vicky on this issue, and Daryl tried to connect me with someone in Wyoming, but we haven't been able to connect despite a couple of attempts. So because the knock is our go-to for issues, and I would assume that the mobile carrier that we believe this is the problem with is going to listen to the knock far more than me. I want that issue as part of the knock issues, because I believe at this point that CenturyLink should be an advocate for us in resolving this issue, because it is a call that eventually gets put into the BESP for delivery. And we're happy to answer, but there are people in Wyoming that are not getting timely enough help because their call is coming here first.
Jennifer, was this the one that you emailed about the cell site?
Yes.
Okay. Daryl, do you have enough information in those emails to add that to your tracker?
Yes, I do. I mean, I will add it to the tracker. I'm not sure that the NOC supervisor will be able to help much with it, but I will continue following up to make sure that we get some responsiveness. So Jennifer, the PSAP manager in Cheyenne, just hasn't been responsive to you?
Yeah, I don't mean to throw her under the bus, but she's also probably busy running a PSAP.
I'm sure that's the case, but yeah, it does need to be resolved one way or the other.
And I'm not sure at this point that it's the responsibility of any PSAP manager to be fixing a cell tower.
Except they could audit that particular carrier's routing.
Right.
So if it's Intrado or Comtech or T-Mobile who does their own.
Yeah, we think that's the issue, is that there's a cell sector that's improperly programmed, and since they're the one that have the routing sheets, that's why I started with them.
Yeah.
Kimberly, go ahead.
Yeah, so we manage in this space quite a bit. Jennifer, I've got some contacts with Intrado I can send over that we get results pretty quick. So maybe that would help, but I'll do that after the phone.
Okay, thank you, and thanks everybody for the help.
Do we know it's a carrier that Intrado manages?
I don't think we know which carrier it is.
That would help to narrow it down.
Unfortunately, it's right at the interchange of I-80 and I-25, and so there's a lot of roaming calls. So there isn't a particular carrier. Well, there was one. I think T-Mobile stood out, but it wasn't clear that it was necessarily a T-Mobile tower.
That's correct, Daryl.
The ESRK that is assigned, whatever it is assigned to the carrier. So if you know the ESRK that came in on the call, we should be able to bring that back to the carrier that was assigned to, and therefore the party provider that's managing them.
We'll go with the context that Kimberly's able to provide. Maybe we can provide them with that ESRK and help narrow it down.
All right, thanks, Rich. Anything else on the knock that we can share with Daryl before we move on?
So just to clarify, I think because obviously there was an issue that Mandy had, I think maybe it'd be a good idea to go ahead and keep this on here for now, just as a reminder to everybody every month to let me know if they have issues, and that way I can pass those on to the NOC supervisor.
Yep, I agree, Daryl. All right, next item, 911 to 988 transfers. I think this has been resolved. Rich, Kathy, I know had to step away. Rich, can you confirm that last thing was tested?
I'm back,
Yeah,
Tina.
okay, go ahead, Kathy.
No, that's okay. Speaking just for the agencies that are in the Arapahoe County Authority, the transfer was working just fine. We tested it at each agency. I am going to assume that it's going to work everywhere because it's working there.
And that was an update from Wes as well. He stated that he confirmed with Intrado and other parties that it was complete.
So if you folks want a little bit more information around it, I can get it to you. What the original ask was to be able to accept 988 directly from the PSAPs for a transfer out. That 3-digit code is what the original timeline was given. I think summer or third quarter of this year will be ready. What we did behind the scenes was create a route set. Either the PSAP can provision a button to go to star 988 or 988-0000000. And when that call comes through, we do the appropriate routing rules to send it out to 988. So we were able to do a nice interim step that is from a PSAP perspective, as long as that button is provisioned correctly, it just seems like a one button transfer. So that was kind of the interim step that we came up with, and everything's working great. So that was what we came up with from, I think when it came up in October, or November, we did some research, we tested it out, and then we got that implemented about a week ago. So
Rich, I have a quick question on that.
Yeah.
So the way the 988 line works, somebody calls 988 and it uses the caller's area code to determine which state crisis hotline center to send it to. Is that happening still if somebody transfers a call to 988 from a 911 line? Are they using the caller's area code to determine where to send that call?
So not the callers in this case. So the way when we transfer out a call through the PSTN, it's the PSAP's number. So which actually, if you give me a second, I think it's the better methodology around it, because that call has been already processed through 911. It's already associated the correct locality that should answer that 911 call. If you got, a VoIP or a wireless number, it wouldn't be as exact. If you had an out-of-state wireless number and you were using that for routing, it would bring you to a wrong state versus it's already done the routing query and knows it's Boulder County, and we'll use the Boulder County NPA and XX of the PSAP to determine, where that should truly be routed to in a 988 perspective. So that's, we thought through that. It made sense for us. It followed our standard processes of transferring a PSAP call through to the PSTN anyway, because we use the PSAP's ANI in that case versus the caller's ANI. And then you would run into issues too that, if you used a caller's ANI and it was a wireless call, it might be a 303-511 number or something like that, which I'm not sure if 988 is set up to do anything with a non-dialable. So it made the most sense to continue to use the PSAP ANI when transferring out.
Okay. That alleviates some of my concerns. Thank you.
Additionally, then the PSAP can follow whatever process and procedures in a soft handoff if they, and this is something we would stay out of. If the PSAP wants to give the location of the caller, give the true callback number of the caller, they can do that. It's up to the PSAP.
I think the only other, recommendation I would have, I'm sure most of you already have these policies in place, but if you don't, it's a really good idea to have a policy in place for your call takers to follow before allowing them to transfer calls, off of 911 to 988 or handing off responsibility for those calls in any way.
If folks need to, I'm not, and we can work this, Tracy, we can work getting this out. I'm not sure if it's gotten out, but if and when PSAPs want to provision their systems to do this, how to do it, whether it's a star 88 or the 988-0000000, we can put that in an email and PSAPs can get that configured at their leisure. But it is available now to all Colorado PSAPs.
Great. Thank you for all of that information, Rich. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Next item on the agenda was the settlement agreement requirement. Tracy, I think, had provided an update that they did a 3-year extension until May of 22. And then there are 2 automatic 1-year extensions after that. I think she said that Tim was going to send the document to the group. Daryl, did you get a copy of that? I couldn't find one.
I have not. I will follow up with him.
Okay. We'll get a copy of that and get that sent out to everybody in the group. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Okay. This is Kimberly. Just not a question, I guess just a complaint. it just seems like we've made this ask months ago, and it's just constantly getting deferred and moved down the line. So it would be great if we could just have Tim send that document to us. It shouldn't. I don't know why it's taking so long.
Yep, we'll find out, Kimberly, and we'll make sure we get it all taken care of and wrapped up. The next one is just a bit of information. I know that last month, Andrew Dameron from Denver had asked us to put this on the agenda, reference the Colorado's relationship with the NIOC. And Daryl, feel free to jump in on any of this. It really sounds like maybe we're in too early of stages as far as the relationship goes, to really determine the credentialing and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so Wes did ask internally about this, and the response he gave me is, and I'll read this from the email, there's still additional processes to work out, even though it's advertised as ready to go, it being the NIOC process. But with open debate about its overall readiness, discussions remain around processes, procedures, and subsequent questions. For example, what are the number of certificates possible and subsequent cost, as well as the proper technical perspective to use these certificates. This will be a journey to track progress, working out details with the NIOC. And my understanding, and Rich, you certainly probably know more about this than I do, but my understanding is the purpose of the NIOC is so that PSAPs can be credentialed to receive 911 calls from other ESInets, which we're not at a point of doing yet anyway. Rich, if you're certainly more of an expert on this than I am, if you want to give more information on that.
Sure. Yeah, it's credentialing, I would say, across the board for I3. So for I3, part of it is that you do an encryption and you do something called TLS, which is you provide, as part of the transaction of a call going into a PSAP, you provide a digital certificate to verify that it's a valid transaction. It's not someone trying to break into the system. I can tell you that Lumen and Intrado and other ESInet providers do this today. We provide our own certificates, so we do follow the technology of it, and eventually that this NIOC is going to be the authoritative body to do it across the country. They're still working through kind of some of their issues there of pricing and operationally and how it's going to work. But that credentialing is true for anything from the ESInet, for I3, from the ESInet to a PSAP. It also gets put in place for something called the Forest Guide, which is when carriers will query a database to make sure they know which ESInet to go to. So Lumen and Intrado are working with NIOC to kind of formalize this process. And to want to, it's just not there yet. But anyway, in the meantime, for those PSAPs that are I3 and that do require credentialing, we are issuing our own credentials at this point until NIOC is ready. Does that make it more confusing or less? I'm not sure.
Thanks, Rich. Andrew?
Yeah, and the other side of that I wanted to make sure we talked about was that the NIOC credentialing is more than just transferring calls and making sure a 911 call is credentialed and correct and accurate and not an intrusion attempt, but it's also what goes into transferring some of that ancillary rich data along with the call. So when you have two PSAPs who are using an EIDO compliant CAD, both of them, the call can be transferred along with all the CAD data, notes, and everything, so that you're getting a more holistic view in that collaborative effort. So, I know just enough to be dangerous, but my understanding is that even just internally within the Colorado ESInet, if we want to start moving toward and utilizing some of these next gen 911 technologies, which a lot of our current vendors are already programming to, that NIOC relationship needs to exist even just within our ESInet. So it's not just between ESInets, it's just the stuff that we want to do within Colorado. It needs to be there as well.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Well, is this something that we feel like we should leave on the agenda, or is it something that we can just pend and discuss later? Daryl, what do you think?
Well, I'll jump in. Because I threw it on the agenda. I think it's along the same lines as the geospatial routing. It's a future state thing, but once again, we are reliant on Lumen to create the infrastructure so that we can start doing things. So that's why, I don't want to just get rid of it, but just like geospatial routing, we need to stay on top of Lumen to keep moving Colorado forward.
We need like a parking lot.
That's exactly what I was going to suggest, Tina. So why don't I create a new document that's sort of a parking lot for topics, and maybe we can revisit those on a periodic basis instead of at every meeting under old business.
I think that sounds great.
Or we won't lose track of them either.
Okay. Okay, next item, receiving OSP calls in the ESInet IP format. Daryl?
Yeah, so I asked Wes this at our last meeting, and the reason I asked is because the FCC currently has some proposed rules out right now that mostly deal with location-based routing for wireless carriers, but they would also require wireless carriers to start delivering calls to ESInets in IP format after being requested to do so. And so that raised the question for me, if we requested that they start delivering calls in IP format, would the CenturyLink / Intrado ESInet be able to receive those calls in that format? Just a moment. Didn't want to clear my throat in everybody's ear. And Wes's response was OSP delivery of calls. It's still in the future, even given the FCC guidance. Both Intrado and Lumen have developed, tested, and deployed basic IP. Lumen deployed basic IP in Minnesota. We are testing for i3 OSP, as is Intrado. However, at this point, very few carriers, if any, have the capability to deploy it in production. Hopefully, this recent FCC position will drive OSPs to take more aggressive steps to reality. And one of the things that disappointed me about the FCC proposed rules is that it would only apply to wireless carriers. Ultimately, all carriers will have to deliver their calls in not only IP format, but i3 format for full next generation 911 deployment. So that makes sense to me that, there isn't a whole lot of pressure to be able to receive calls in IP format if all of the carriers aren't able to do that yet. Matt?
The crux that's related to that is the carrier's location information servers.
Correct.
For dynamically pushing device locations at the time of a call.
And this is why NASDA has really been pushing the FCC to help create more of a structure around what the originating service providers are expected to do to facilitate next-gen 911 deployment. Because a lot of states like Colorado don't have any regulatory authority to tell them how to deliver their 911 calls.
And I would just make a couple of comments there. Generally say that we want that end state. We want that i3 end state where the carriers are providing location information or path to get the location information along with their voice IP, which is the i3 methodology. But I tell you, we'll take whatever we can get. So there are a few carriers here and there that can do IP, and that's where Wes said the basic IP. So getting them off an old TDM infrastructure, or a lot of these wireless carriers, for instance, are on an IP infrastructure, and then they have to downgrade to TDM to get it into the 911 systems. We'll take the basic IP because that takes TDM out of the equation. It speeds it up. There's better redundancy and diversity. So we're hoping for the best, which is i3, but we're realistic in that we'll probably see carriers roll out this basic IP first, which is, again, good for everybody, good for the state of Colorado. And we're sitting and waiting for them to have that capability. More and more wireless carriers are getting it. VoIP providers are getting it through the third-party providers.
Yeah, I think if these rules become effective, I think it'll be up to us to just kind of coordinate probably through these meetings in the future to determine if there's a time that we want to start requesting the wireless carriers to deliver calls in IP format, which I think you're right. I think most, at least the major carriers, are probably ready to do that already. I know that California has already been able to deliver calls from T-Mobile all the way from the user all the way to the call taker in IP format without ever having to translate it.
Yep, and like Wes said on that call, there's a third-party provider in Minnesota, IntelliQuint, that does the aggregation. Now they still do TDM aggregation for their carriers in some cases, some IP, I think mostly TDM, but then they send all of those calls from Minnesota to Lumen IP. So I think the majority of the traffic now in Minnesota is coming through IP to the next gen system.
Very good. So Tina and Kathy, I think I'd be okay with removing this for now, and then we can just revisit it maybe at a future date after after those rules are finalized.
Yep, I think that sounds good, Daryl.
I'm good with that.
All right. I wasn't sent anything for new business. Does anybody have anything? So we got a few more minutes before our hour's up. Matt?
The discussion earlier about wireless routing prompted something. We're looking for a good wireless routing contact at T-Mobile that will be responsive and get things taken care of. We've got 2 new towers with them that T-Mobile's become unresponsive about, one going back over 12 months and one over 6 months. So if someone has a good contact that gets things done, we would be grateful to have that information.
Hi, Matt, I do.
Okay.
I'll send it to you.
And then, honestly, we're having a similar issue with Intrado's wireless unit on another tower. The Intrado wireless analyst has become unresponsive, and I think we're around 4 months out on that one. And so I'm looking for a resource to talk to someone above an analyst or just get some response out of Intrado. So if you have a contact for that too, we would be grateful. It's just unreasonable that these things drag on like this when they send us conflicting information and we ask for a clarification and then they go silent.
Matt, I can ask someone at Intrado to reach out to you.
Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Sure.
Chrissy. Appreciate that.
Would just as a request, if somebody has that kind of routing information or routing contact information, if you wouldn't mind sending it to me, because I try to maintain a list of that in case people ask. The contacts I have for T-Mobile, I don't know how good they are. So if they're not good, let me know and I can take them off my list. Is Sarah Kreitz and Jill Ellis. So if you don't have either of those person's contact information, I can send those to you.
I don't. I have Sally Cromer.
Okay, I will send you what I've got. I don't know if that's different than what you have, Kimberly.
Yeah, that is. And Sally, I don't believe is not with T-Mobile any longer.
Okay.
So I'll send you my stuff too, and Daryl, I'll CC you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kimberly. Thanks, Matt. And Daryl, thanks.
Yeah, this is Chris from Delta. I have some contacts that I've been speaking with at T-Mobile that are very responsive, so I'll send those over.
Oh, right on. Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Open discussion. Are there any concerns from PSAPs or authorities to Lumen that we haven't already discussed? Okay, and the reverse, anything from Lumen to PSAPs or authorities that we need action on or follow up?
I have, so this is not, sorry, I'm going out of order. I have one question to ask. One is that, and this kind of goes on to something we've discussed before, is that Kimberly noted that there have been an increase in non-service initialized calls lately in the state. Kentucky has also noticed this, and they've been talking to the FCC. So I intended to go through Intrado Insights to see if I could find any reports that might tell me how many NSI calls there are statewide, and see if I can use that to determine if there is an increase. But as long as we're on this call today, I wanted to ask the Intrado and CenturyLink folks if you know of any way that you could look into the system to see how many NSI calls are received statewide by PSAPs, and potentially even compare that to a previous time period like last year to see if there's been an increase that we can demonstrate. And I'm sorry if that's clear as mud.
You know, Daryl, this is Rich Johnson. I'm not sure, but I'll take it offline. You know, it's from our perspective, I'm trying to think how it would look. It would look like a no record found, right? Is that true? Let me take it offline and see if there's a way we can narrow it down for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Does anybody else have anything? Okay, and our last item is public comment. This is just a time for any non-voting members to ask any questions or bring anything up that is ESInet related. All right, not hearing anything. Anything else for the good of the order before I adjourn? Great. We are showing adjourned at 11:03. Everybody have a great afternoon and stay warm.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.